Cocktail Sessions, educational and inspirational talks from experienced startup founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders.
All right, so my wife is a high school teacher, and she teaches, I think it's every Friday she has a double period class. And I looked at my watch, and this is definitely a double period class, and the kids get really unruly right towards the end. So first of all, do we need to take a little break, or can we just keep going with this? Can we go with this? I know that I guess there's one other presentation after me, is that right? Because I would imagine that there's a desire to move on to the libations and to the fancy whiskeys that we've all been informed that we should be drinking. Randall, are you paying for those whiskeys? I hope so. Good, excellent. So I got on a plane this morning in Hartford, Connecticut. It was 3 degrees at 6:30 this morning. So it was 3:30 in the morning here. So Justin, you were just going to bed. Yeah, it was very cold. Bambi, great to meet you, to hear about Oakland, because I spent 12 years living in Oakland. And when I was doing that, it was part of my investment banking career. I was working in San Francisco. I took the BART across the way every morning. We worked New York hours, so we had to be at our desks on the trading desk at 7:30. 5 o'clock in the morning. 5 o'clock in the morning. It was a crazy time. I worked for a firm called Montgomery Securities, and this was in 1996 to leading up through the Y2K and then the .com, and I worked on the IPO of Amazon and Yahoo and Egghead Software and a bunch of tech companies. And of course, it was a joke because when Amazon, we took Amazon public, of course there was no prospect of the company ever making any money. But at that time, investors didn't really care. They were just so enamored with this idea, like, wow, this is such a cool notion. And of course, and then we sort of watched the Nasdaq go up to 5,000, and then it was hell broke loose, right? It was a complete disaster. So I thought I was really smart when I was working in investment banking, because my job was to work with these entrepreneurs who had built these small companies, right? Small emerging growth companies, and we would take them public. And I did that for that part of my career. I did for about 15 years, and it sort of occurred to me one day that I really knew nothing about what it meant to be an entrepreneur or to have a small company, right? Like, I would look at Amazon as a small company, right? Well, of course, when Amazon went public, they already had, a couple thousand employees. And I thought, if you really want to know what it means to be an entrepreneur, and what it takes to start a company, right? Because we have the audacity as investment bankers to think, well, we're going to give you our advice, and we're going to impart on you our knowledge about how to make your company successful. I thought, well, you know what? I should really kind of get my hands dirty and get into the trenches of, like, what does it mean to really start a company? And it was, as many of you know, because you guys have been doing this, it was an extraordinarily eye-opening experience, because I really realized that, wow, by the time, as an investment banker, that you meet a company that's ready to go public, it's not a small company, right? It's a big company, right? Maybe it's not a billion-dollar company, but it's a big company. And so I set out in 2005 to leave investment banking behind and to really focus on entrepreneurship, and specifically, I really want to focus on teaming up with people, visionary founders, who had a particular sort of social mission focus. So for me, it was really about identifying people who wanted to do things that were going to have real social or environmental impact. So it was about purpose. And so what I really want to do tonight is talk a little bit about purpose and why I think it's so important. Now, Did anybody read the article in the New York Times? I think it was last Sunday in the magazine section. The author of The Tiger Mom, Amy Chua. Yes. Did anybody read that article? Yes, no? Anybody read the article about this new book that Amy and her husband, they're both Yale professors, they've written about, based upon their research, their analysis, they've come up with what they think are sort of the three critical character traits, ingredients for success. And those three traits are, one, that somebody has to have a sense of superiority and exceptionalism. Superiority. Oftentimes, that comes from some class identity or a social or religious identity, however you want to define class. So that's the first. The second is that successful people suffer from an inferiority complex. Wow, right? So you sort of say exceptionalism, superiority, but an inferiority complex. That's a strange mix. But the reason why that's important is because really successful people, they're out to prove something. And the link of that being out to prove something to the sense of superiority as it relates to a class or identity is you want to sort of live up to the ideals of the people you know, who you feel like you belong to, right? So you want to look good in the eyes of that class. The third trait is the ability to delay gratification, impulse control. Now, has anybody heard of the marshmallow experiment? Yes? It's the famous Stanford experiment. Right. So, you know, this guy, what's his name? Walter Mischel, I think, was the psychologist who, I guess at the time he was at Stanford, but I think then he went to Columbia, and where he sort of extended the experiment. But he had 2 or 3 kids, 4, 5, 6 years old, and he one day decided that he was going to, I don't know how this happened, but he was going to lock his kids in a room and give them each, put some marshmallows on the table in front of them and say, if you can have 1 marshmallow right now, but I'm going to leave the room here, and if you can wait until I come back into the room, I'm going to give you 2 marshmallows. And he, I guess his youngest kid maybe, who was maybe 3, maybe 4, just grabbed the marshmallow, had to eat it right away. It was not going to wait, right? His 5 or 6-year-old, sort of, I guess, according to the way the story is told, was sort of controlled the impulse and said, you know, I'm gonna wait. And so Dad walks back in the room after a few minutes. And, you know, and the 3-year-old is eating the marshmallow, and so no more marshmallow for you. And the 6-year-old or 5-year-old had not eaten the marshmallow, so he got 2 marshmallows. So that led to a much, much longer experiment and test that was done at Stanford, you know, generated a lot of focus and attention and controversy, et cetera. But what they then did is they went back many years later, right, to the initial groups that they studied, and to track the performance of these people through their lives. And what they determined was that there was a direct correlation between how long that 4 or 5-year-old could delay the gratification and how they scored on their SATs. And in fact, according to the article that I read, like being able to delay the gratification at the age of 5 by something like, 20 minutes or 25 minutes, translated into, on average, 175 higher points on the SAT. And this was lots of, so anyway, kind of crazy stuff. So the reason why you're sort of saying, well, what are we talking about? Like, what does any of this have to do with anything? It's because I think there is inside that young child's head, mind, and that discipline or that ability to delay gratification, I think there is also a kernel of something called purpose. And how people sort of manifest in terms of when they go forward in life, how they define their life's activities around the extent to which they want to have a purposeful life. And the reason why I think this is relevant to entrepreneurship and the work that you're all doing is because I think that companies, startup companies that don't have a clear sense of purpose oftentimes don't come close to fulfilling the potential that they could. There's a quote from David Packard, which I'll share with you. He wrote this in 1960. He said, "I want to discuss why a company exists in the first place. In other words, why are we here? I think many people assume wrongly that a company exists simply to make money. While this is an important result of a company's existence, we have to go deeper and find the real reasons for our being. A group of people come together to accomplish something collectively that they could not accomplish separately. They make a contribution to society, a phrase which sounds trite, but is fundamental." So when I have the opportunity to work with entrepreneurs, and the first company that I co-founded, Hello Wallet, we had a very, very clear purpose, which was, and is today, to democratize access to financial guidance for all Americans. That's the purpose of the company. And then we went about figuring out how we were going to make that happen. Right? How are we going to use technology, web-based technology, and a delivery channel, B2B2C, selling Hello Wallet to enterprises to provide Hello Wallet as a benefit to their employees, that was going to be the way we were going to be able to accomplish our purpose. I think the trick, so when I work with founders and startup companies, sort of the purpose has to start from the top, right? It has to be embedded, I think many companies are founded just because somebody has like a neat idea, but doesn't really know kind of what that idea really means, other than it's kind of a fun, like it's a project like this. And there's nothing wrong, and Randall made the point earlier that anybody who thinks that everything has to be baked from the beginning is crazy, because I agree that most times it's not fully baked. But I think it's really, I think companies can save themselves, or entrepreneurs can save themselves a lot of heartache by trying to sort of figure out what is that overarching purpose for what I am trying to do. Forget about the fact that you don't have the solution, or you don't have the delivery model, you don't really understand how you're going to make it happen. That doesn't matter, because you'll figure it out as long as you have the overarching purpose of what you're trying to accomplish. The other thing I wanted just to sort of talk about for a minute is that how this idea of purpose, how it gets imbued in the corporate identity of the organization that you're building. Again, getting back to some of the, I think, sort of fallacies of, or as a like investment banker, you sit down with a company, you say, let's talk about your strategy, right? Well, articulate to me your strategy. What do you, blah, blah, blah. And the problem is that, and it was, John Mackey in his book, Conscious Capitalism, says that, a great strategy without a compelling purpose, is like a beautiful highway that doesn't lead anywhere that people want to go. Right, and so you can, sit down with somebody. I used to do this, right? You sit down and somebody sort of says, "Well, here's my strategy. Here's how I'm going to do this and this and this," and then you say, "But what's it really all about? Like, what are you really, seeking to accomplish with this company?" In the context of purpose and corporate identity, I think the really, really great companies, the sort of, I'm going to say iconic companies because there are a number of them. What you'll find is that there are there's the Platonic ideal is at the heart of most great companies, and there are three, right? It's either the company exists to do good, it exists to seek truth, or it exists to seek beauty, right? It's. I mean, you can look at. Academics have done this. And they look at these all these companies. They say, they either fit into the good bucket, the true bucket, or the beautiful bucket. And what's really, I think, particularly compelling about when you listen to some, like really great leaders of companies, is their ability to articulate, that Platonic ideal. In the context of their company and what the purpose of their company is. So we think about purpose as the reason why your organization exists. When we think about, and once we know that, like what is the fundamental reason why this company exists, then you can think about mission. You see, I think it's easy to sort of start with mission, but a mission is just what your organization does, right? That's just it's what you do, and it's important to like have mission be concrete, so you can actually have KPIs and you can sort of measure progress. But absent the purpose, the mission, kind of easily gets lost. But once you have your mission, then you can have your strategy, right? Because the strategy is just the map that gets you there. How do I execute on the mission? And then obviously the goals are the milestones that you establish along the way, so you know whether or not you're making progress. So, does that make sense?
Logically.
You said illogically?
No, logically.
Oh, yeah, well, I guess that's good. So sort of thinking about purpose as the for the individual or the company founder, then purpose for the corporate identity, right? Imbuing in the identity of your company, but then also purpose and your brand proposition, right? Because at the end of the day, what we're all doing is we're trying to build brands, and you've all probably heard Simon Sinek's famous TED Talk about why. What is it? The circle of why. That consumers don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? They don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And there's some really great research that's been done. I don't know if you're familiar with the research that's been done by Edelman, the PR firm, and they do every year or every other year they do this study. It's called the trust survey. Thank you. And what they the survey comes back and it shows that consumers pay a premium, right? Pay a premium for purposeful brands that. Consumers, and it wasn't always this way, but increasingly it's this way, that consumers will pay a premium and will, given a selection, are going to buy the brand where they feel that they can either identify with the purpose or they feel like it's doing a good thing for society. So that sort of notion of purpose flows all the way through to your brand identity. So that's all I wanted to say about purpose. I just wanted to thank Justin for inviting me to come here. Yeah.
We have time for one or two questions. Questions up in front.
Thank you very much. You know, the interesting thing is I think an idea is a purpose, and we get lost in the logical side of things. You take a bunch of kids that are creative, they put ideas together, but they don't understand logic and step-by-step processes, which you've just pointed out today. So they get lost in the process, and that's the business that dies 12 months later. But the smart, intelligent one who drags someone like you into the process, who knows how to put them in a direction, stick them on a road, and know where they're going, they're the guys who make it in the long run. So there's two sides to this equation, and yet we're all trying to work out how to fathom this by staying on one side of the street.
Yeah.
And you can never separate the creative talent, because when you do, they die.
Yeah, that's a great point, and if I understand correctly where you're going with that, I think it's a really great point. So, for instance, Randall made the point that he talked about how he has an advisory board, right, and how important it is to have an advisory board. I think one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs, company founders make is they don't recognize their limitations, right? They don't recognize like what they don't know. And it's completely unrealistic, illogical, to assume that anybody can figure all this out on their own, right? And so you're absolutely right? Like somebody who has a great idea but hasn't really figured out what to do with it. That's not a sign of weakness, right? In fact, Right, but the challenge is for that person who has a great idea to say, I have a great idea, but I need some help figuring out what to do with this great idea. Yeah. Thank you. Sure, thank you.